Welcome back. Today I'm going to be going over this SAT constant question. And once again, right, I'd like you guys to try this for yourself before I dive into the explanation. Okay, so before we get started, right, thanks to Anico.ai once again for providing this specific problem in their free resources tab. But we have a system of equations here, right, where k is a constant. And it tells us that if the system were to have exactly one real solution and k is a positive number, which choice gives the value of k? That's the given system, and we're given the values of k here, the possible values of k. So what do we do first? Well, there's actually two ways to do this problem, right? Both of them you can actually use Desmos, right? Um, I'll show you the first way first, which is just dealing with these right now, right? You know your end goal is to find a value of k, and you know that this system here has one solution, right? So, well, let's try actually solving the system manually, right? So you can take the value of y and plug it into the first one. So you get x squared plus x plus k squared, right? Equals 12x. So now, after you write that, of course, expand. So x squared plus this part here, FOIL, right? X squared plus 2xk plus k squared, right, equals 12x. Get everything on one side, and I'll show you why, but this becomes 2x squared plus 2xk. I'm going to write that as 2kx minus 12x, right, because you're subtracting this 12x, and then plus k squared equals 0. And then let's factor out the x term, so you get 2k minus 12, right? And again, I'm factoring the x term out because we're going to be using a specific value here. So we're down to this quadratic, right? You'll notice that it's in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, right? Remember, go back to the problem, and it tells us specifically one thing, right? It has exactly one real solution. Now, if you're familiar with the concept of solutions, right, then you know in for quadratics there's a special thing called the discriminant, right? B squared minus 4ac. And essentially what that tells you is how many values, right, a quadratic has, or how many roots it has. In this case, because the system has only one real solution, right? Anytime you have a quadratic which only has one real solution, the discriminant is equal to 0, right? So now we first let's find the discriminant first. So right, we have the a term is 2, the b term, right? And this is why I factored out the x, so we know what the b coefficient itself is, which is 2k minus 12, and c equals k squared, right? That's just the constant. You can just put that as c. So now plugging in everything into the discriminant, you get 2k minus 12 squared, right? And then you can set all of that actually equal to 4ac, right? Because if you add plus 4ac, right, this cancels out. So 4 times a, which is 2, is 8. A times c, which is k squared, is 8k squared. And now you just have to solve for the value of k. And you could do this manually, but what I would instead do is go to Desmos, type the left side of the equation. Instead of using k, I'm going to use x here, right? So it shows up, but on the left side, you put the left side of the equation, right? And on the right side, you put 8 squared, 8k squared. And look for where these graphs intersect, right? So you'll notice that they intersect at that specific value. Now you might be wondering, well, do you put 2.4, like do you put the x coordinate or the y coordinate? Well, think about it, right? This k here is equivalent to the x here, right? So we look at the x coordinate. In this case, right, that's 2.4853, right? I'm just gonna round it to that. Now we found the value of k, but you'll notice that none of these are decimal answers. So all that means is you just have to type each one and figure out which one matches, right? So it's not A. Uh, if you type in B, you'll get 2.4853, which is exactly what we got earlier. So therefore B is our answer choice. Okay, so that's the first way to do this problem, right? If you got that right, good job, right? But another way to do it is actually going to Desmos straight away. So if you type this equation in, right, x squared plus y squared equals 12x, right, and y equals x plus k, for k add the slider, right, you get these graphs. Now, in my opinion, this method actually makes the problem much efficient, in like it makes it much easier to solve, right? It's more faster because look, you have the two graphs here, and you know that the system has one solution, right? That means that these graphs only should intersect at one point. So you have to change the slider so that it only intersects at one point, right? So somewhere around there. You'll notice that you might not know what the exact value is, but let's say it's close to 2.6, right? So you can say k is close to 2.6, right? And what you can do likewise, right, is match each of these answer choices again and see which one is closest to that value, and that will give you answer choice B, right? You can also just right away plug in these answer choices into K, right? So for example, if I typed in um, answer choice A, right, that would give you -6 minus 6 root 2. And you'll notice, well, that looks like it has one solution, but you'll actually realize that if you zoom in far enough, that these actually don't intersect, right? A good way to tell, right, if you can't tell, and you don't want to like spend all that time zooming in, right, is let's type in B here for a sec, right? You'll know that these two graphs have a solution if you highlight one of them and you see just a point there, right? Like a point highlighted, right? That's a good sign that those two do intersect, right? So that's why Desmos is actually helpful in that sense, right? The interface is helpful because it actually tells you that hey, they're intersecting at that point. And of course, right, in that case, k would be -6 plus 6 root t, 6 root 2, which is answer choice B. So those are two different ways to approach this problem, right? I think anytime you have a system of equations and just one constant, just going into Desmos and playing around with that constant value can 100% give you the right answer. And it's actually the most efficient way to do it. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit that subscribe and the like button. And of course, we post videos daily to help you guys on SAT and ACT prep. So if you want to be notified, hit that notification bell. But I wish you a very amazing day. I hope that if you do have any questions, leave it down in the comments, and I'll see you next time.